I would like to start today by paying tribute to a famous Sri Lankan cricketer who was laid to rest this past week, Mr. Daya Sahabandhu. Paceman, left-arm leg spinner, played for Nomads, took over 1,000 wickets, played for Sri Lanka, colleague of Michael Thisera, Anura Tennakoon, people of the past, eminent cricketers who paved the way for Sri Lanka to be recognized internationally. I remember my first class cricket match for the Pisara Trophy as a schoolboy player. I was opening against Daya Sahabandhu. Rohan Jayasekara, a colleague of mine, scored 100 in that match. It was one of 3 people in history in their first class match has actually scored a century. So our sympathies to his wife Swarna and son Janaka. අද අපි මේ ක්‍රිකට් ගැන කතා කරන අවස්ථාවේදී අපිට මතක් වෙනවා මට විශේෂයෙන්ම මොරටුවේ ක්‍රිකට් ක්ලබ් එකත් අපිට මේ අවස්ථාවේදී ක්‍රිකට් සමාජය මතක් වෙනවා. අවුරුදු 1941 ආරම්භ කළේ එම ක්‍රීඩා සමාජය හරහා ජාතික මට්ටමින් ක්‍රීඩකයන් 47ක් ලංකාවට සෙල්ලම් කරලා තිබෙනවා. මේ ක්‍රිකට් සමාජය ඉස්සර විතරක් නෙමෙයි අදත් ඔය ගවර්නර්ස් ට්‍රෝෆි එක එහෙම 2018 දිනාගෙන තියෙනවා. අද ඒ ජාත්‍යන්තර ස්ටේඩියම් එක මොරටුවේ මහනගර සභාව විසින් නඩත්තු කරන ක්‍රීඩාංගණය තුල පුටු නැහැ, වැසිකිලි නැහැ, ගොඩනැගිලි කැඩිලා ක්‍රීඩාංගණය තුල මහජනතාවට පහසුකම් නැහැ, වැසිකිලියක්වත් නැහැ, කිසි දෙයක් නැහැ. කාන්තාවකට නම් ඒ ක්‍රීඩාංගණයට එන්නම බැරි තත්ත්වයක් තියෙනවා. නම් මේ වගේ අවුරුදු 82ක විශාල ඉතිහාසයක් තියෙන මේ ක්‍රීඩා සමාජය 2022 මාර්තු මාස 25 වෙනි දින අගුළු දමා වසා ඒ ක්‍රීඩාගාරයට ඇතුළු වෙන්නවත් ඉඩ දුන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මේ ක්‍රීඩා සමාජයේ කලේ අධිකරණයට ගිහිල්ලා ප්‍රාථමික අධිකරණයෙන් ගොඩනැගිල්ල නැවතී භුක්තිය පිහිටුවීම සඳහා නියෝගයක් ලබා ගත්තා. ඒ වෙලාවේ නගර සභාව ආයෙත් ගිහිල්ලා ප්‍රාථමික අධිකරණයේ නියෝගය ක්‍රියාත්මක වීමේ අත්හිටුවීමෙන් නියෝගයක් ලබා ගත්තා. ඊට පස්සේ මොනවද මේ අය කළේ? පානදුර මහා අධිකරණයේ කොන්දේසි 16ක් මත සම්මතයකට එකඟ වුණා. ඒ සම්මතයට එකඟ වෙලා නඩු දෙකම අයින් කරගත්තා. එහෙත් මේ සම්මතය මේ ඇවිල්ලා අධිකරණයට ගිහිල්ලා තිකටගත්ත සම්මතය අද වෙනකන් ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙලා නැහැ. ඔන්න ක්‍රිකට් වලට වෙලා තියෙන දේ මම මේ මොරටුව ගැන කතා කළේ. නමුත් මොරටුවේ විතරක් නෙමෙයි හැම තැනම ක්‍රිකට් වලට වෙලා තියෙන දේ ගැන අද මේ වාද විවාදය යන්නේ හේෂ මන්ත්‍රීතුමා ඒකයි මේ වාද විවාදය ආරම්භ කළේ. දැන් අපි දන්නවා මෙතන කතා කළා විශේෂයෙන්ම විගණන වාර්තාවක් ගැන කතා කළා. ඒ විගණන වාර්තාවේ කරුණු ගැන මම ඒව ගැන කියන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් මෙම පුද්ගලයෝ තමයි වරින් වර 1997 ඉඳලා අද වෙනකන් ක්‍රිකට් පාලනයේ නිරත වෙලා ඉන්නේ. ඒ අය මෙච්චර හොඳට මේක පාලනය කරා නම් ඇයි අද අපේ ටෙස්ට් ශ්‍රේණිගත කිරීම වලින් 7 වන ස්ථානයටත් ඒ වගේම සීමිත ඕවර් ශ්‍රේණිගත කිරීම වලින් 8 ස්ථානයට 9 ස්ථානයට වැටිලා අපි පස්සෙන් පස්සට සිම්බාබ්වේ, ස්කොට්ලන්තය, අයර්ලන්තය, නේපාලය වගේ රටවල් වලටත් පිටිපස්සට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ. අපි වර්ල්ඩ් කප් එක දිනපු රටක්. ඒත් අද අපිට වර්ල්ඩ් කප් ගහන්න සුදුසුකම් ලැබීමට අපිට තරඟ කරන්න සිදු වෙලා තියෙනවා. අපේ T20 කණ්ඩායම ලෝක කුසලයනේ දිනපු රටක්. අපි අද ඉන්නේ 8 වෙනි ස්ථානයේ. මේ පාලකයන් මොනවද මේ ක්‍රීඩාවට කරලා තියෙන්නේ කියන ප්‍රශ්නේ එනවා. But really I want to focus today on how we need to put this actually right. The ICC basically 8 years ago in 2016 to 2023 they bundled all their rights, and that is they bundled the 4 T20s, the 2 50 over World Cups and other matches, and they negotiate an amount by selling their rights. That amount is what is actually distributed among the countries. And Sri Lanka for the 8 years from 2016 to 2023. Originally, we were getting only $80 million, but we were able to renegotiate it to $132 million. Mr. Tilanga Sumatipala was at that time president of this, and he managed to actually cleverly, I would say, renegotiate it. So Sri Lanka gets annually a fair share of dollars. We were able to put, together with the other countries, reduce India's take on it from $569 million to $293, and getting a more fair distribution. Now this is about money, no question about it. That is why there is so much controversy behind it. And therefore, we need to really look at it. There is political interference. There is no question about it. We know, right, and I would say about political interference, I have heard a former Minister of Sports here say, we mustn't have political interference. The question I want to ask him is, if that's the case, should politicians hold positions in sports associations? I think it's an absolute no. If we really don't want to have interference, let the professionals handle it. Politicians don't need to get actually involved in it. So there have been lots of issues by ministers getting involved in it. And here, on the 17th of July 2019, a special directive was being given by Mr. Harin Fernando, who was then Minister of Sports. And he says, for Sri Lanka cricket to urge all coaches of the national team to step down soon after the Bangladesh ODI and tour of 2019. Again, I am not questioning what happened. I'll leave that to the professionals to question. But my point I'm saying here is, politicians should not be involved in removing national coaches. That's the point that I'm making. That's the politicization I'm talking about. And this letter, this letter is there. Then also, I know that later we went and got some Sri Lankan outstanding cricketers like Asanta Gurusinghe. I read basically an interview that he had given, and I'm quoting him. He said, I found that there was overwhelming political interference which hinders the development of our cricket. I worked under 3 sports ministers in a 2-year stint. During my stint with Sri Lanka cricket, during the latter part of my stint, through the interference was too much. I was not allowed to fulfill my duties properly. I left Sri Lanka disappointed. That's because my sole intention of going there was to serve Sri Lanka and win the 2023 World Cup in India, where we have a great chance of winning. But eventually, I had to throw away all my plans, he said. And then we had Haturu Singh, another outstanding Sri Lankan, who was taken by another board, and he came to serve this country. And he said, Haturu Singh puhunukaruweku lesa meka kiyanne Ranjit Fernando, another Sri Lankan outstanding player of the past, right? He was Sri Lanka's wicketkeeper, later Sri Lanka's manager. Haturu Singh puhunukaruweku lesa පැමිණි විට දෙයක් වගේම ලංකාවේ ක්‍රිකට් වල වාසනාව. ඉතින් දැන් අපි හතුරට කාලය දෙන්න ඕනේ කණ්ඩායමට ඉදිරියට ගෙන එන්න. පිටින් පුහුණුකරුවන් අවම කණ්ඩායම සමග සම්බන්ධ වෙනවා අඩුයි. ඒ කියන්නේ පිටින් ගෙනවත් විදේශීය පුහුණුකරුවෙක් ගෙනවත් එයාගේ සම්බන්ධය ටීම් එකකට එක්ක හුඟක් අඩුයි කියලා තමයි මේ රංජිත් ප්‍රනාන්දු මැතිතුමා මෙතන සඳහන් කරන්නේ. මම එය කළමනාකාරයෙක් හැටියට දැකලා තියෙන දෙයක්. ඉතින් මේ අපේ අදහස් නෙමෙයි. ඒකයි මම මේ ක්‍රිකට් ගැන දන්න ක්‍රිකට් සෙල්ලම් කරපු ක්‍රිකට් කළමනා කරපු අයගේ මේ අදහස් මෙතන සඳහන් කරන්නේ. So we have a problem. We have to admit it. Politicians being involved, political interference is a problem. Coaches have been asked to step down by politicians. If the board decides that, then that's a different issue. So Sri Lanka's ratings have come down terribly. If you look 2014, 2023, they have come down terribly. They have come down. So I think we have a governance issue. And the governance issue is what we need to actually correct. Now there is a misconception, right? We need, for sure, a new constitution is needed. We need to make the changes. And I don't think we should get the World Cup or anything in its way and say an interim committee will cause any problem. I think we should move away from that. We need to. We have 140 odd clubs making the decisions. Most of the countries in the world have between 6, 14, 28, clubs that are actually making the decision. This constitution there has been a constitution that has been given to the minister, drawn up by Justice Chitrasiri, and so forth. And some of the others, I think Duminda Hulangamu has been involved in it, Arita Wickramaratne has been involved in it, right? These are people who has cricket in their blood and in their heart. And we should definitely look at using a new constitution. Cricket is not a private organization, right? Cricket is a national organization, and I really want to make this point. We need to go by the ICC's guiding principles: good conscience, equity, common sense and simplicity, enabling every member to grow. Revenue must be generated by members, greater transparency, recognition of interdependency among members, that cricket playing nations need each other. Strong nations there are, the better for the sport. As such, we can also then distribute the revenues that we get more fairly and more equitably. And I want to make this case very, very clear. I saw some comments made by people involved in Sri Lanka cricket saying that, oh, government mustn't interfere. They're not accountable to anybody. This is a private organization. I think that is a misnomer. It is not private in that sense. And I'm going to conclude, Mr. Speaker, right? Because cricket belongs to all. And therefore, the guiding principles must be adhered to, and there is no question about that. French philosopher Rousseau drew the distinction between the majority vote and the majority will. This is very, very important for us to understand. Majority vote, yes, there is things that can be done by the vote, but the majority will is not always equal to the majority vote. So Sri Lanka cricket is owned by the Sri Lankan people, and that is why representatives like us have to actually come and question what is happening. It's not owned by a few individuals or just not by a few associations. It's owned by the Sri Lankan people. The majority vote is one thing and the majority will is one thing. Therefore, I urge the minister to bring forward a new constitution. If it requires an interim committee, that's fine. For the purpose of bringing a new constitution, let's clean this sport. Let's put the system right. That's what's important. We are not after individuals. Put the system right so that Sri Lanka cricket can go back to its past glory.